And a good morning to you. Welcome inside the bottom line here on a Wednesday morning. I think we got about 40 degrees or something this morning. Not as cool as it has been. Yesterday was such a different day. Don't know how much you were out yesterday, but I watched the weather, got out, headed out about 7 o'clock, went over to the plant, had seen the weather, looked like things was going to be nice for the day. Came out about 10 o'clock, needed to go get a back adjustment, and it was like, where did the weather go? It was dark, it was cloudy, the wind was blowing, it was cold, and the wind was brutal yesterday. I took my truck up to dropped it off up here at Quality Discount Tire and got the oil changed, tires rotated. Addison picked me up, brought me back down here, and they said it'd be ready about 3 o'clock. So she was going to pick me up and take me back before she went for her MRI. They called and said they'd had a cancellation. Could they come earlier? So they took off earlier. So I walked back, which is not a big deal. I mean, it's not a bad little walk.
No.
The problem was for every 2 steps I took, it blew me back one. The wind was brutal going down through there. And it's stirring up the pollen and all the crap in the air in your head, and just not a good thing.
Well, at least you weren't in at Watauga High School baseball field yesterday.
I guess it was.
Yeah, so
I bet it was a little nipply up there.
595 mile an hour winds. I looked on the thing. I looked on the weather app when we got out. It said feels like 50, or it says 51 degrees. Feels like 32 with the wind.
Yeah.
And I watched 2 doubleheaders with Andrew Williams there.
Morris Hill?
It was G's
okay.
Athletes Lab
middle
school team, homeschool team.
I got you.
They were playing Watauga's middle school team. So, that was a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Other than the 500-mile-an-hour winds. We saw a ball, Lanny, hit to center field that ended up behind the second and first baseman. Like that, people talk about, now these kids are not, they don't hit line,
right.
Hard, but he popped it up, and that's how much the wind brought it over.
I have never been to the new high school. Now, when I was at Appalachian, the old high school, they had their own ski slope.
Yes.
Back up in the woods.
Yeah, sure.
So when it would snow and school would be out, we would go up there, and that's where we'd slide.
100%.
We'd get them little plastic sleds and put some adult beverages in the snow.
The high school, they played football at Appalachian State, but
they didn't have
JV football at the high school.
Oh, I didn't even know they had a field.
Yeah. They got a great field. They just didn't have, the facilities were a little dated at the
old
time.
one.
But what they did was they renovated it before they built the new high school.
And then they tore it all down.
It was immaculate. I mean, they did a great job when they renovated that small stadium, but due to the age and the complexity and how many people, were moving in and how much it had grown, it was a good move to build that high school. Michael White and Preston Clark were both principals at that high school, the new one.
I wasn't aware of that.
The new one, yeah. So, you've been up there several times. Beautiful setting. Football field is beautiful turf. Baseball field's not turf, but the Kentucky 31, the bluegrass, and that's what you use up there.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at Avery County,
it's cool.
Yeah, I was like, okay, what are we going to do about grass in the winter? It's going to be like, no. It'll be bright green all year. It almost looked not blue, but
you didn't even have to rye it.
No. It was.
That's because it can stand the heat in the summertime,
and no problem, right? Because it's not that hot.
It's kind of like Mount Mitchell Golf Course. If I'm not mistaken, it's bent.
I'm gonna tell you something.
The whole
brother.
thing's bent.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's. I'm telling you, things. Yeah, colder, all this stuff, but the grass up there stays. Especially with those fields, it stays green year round.
Oh yeah,
it's beautiful, beautiful.
Sure. But I sat down last night. Of course, you know this. I am big into college softball.
Oh yeah,
love to watch college softball. Just happened upon a fantastic game between 2 top 20 teams last night. South Carolina versus Clemson. South Carolina was ranked number 12. Clemson was 19. Great game. It was down in Clemson. There were people, they said, in the parking lot waiting to get in 8 hours before the gates opened. It was packed. It was a full house.
Absolutely.
The top half of the first inning took forever, and then it took like 4.5 minutes to play the next 3. I mean, it just soup. South Carolina's pitcher, when they replaced her in the third, and I don't know why they replaced her. It was 0-0.
Yeah.
I mean, both teams had gotten runners on the corners but couldn't get them in. Anyway, they replaced her. She didn't have but 28 pitches in 3 innings. That was it.
Amazing.
And then they brought the next girl in, and she made it all the way to the end. And I got so aggravated. Went to extra innings. It was tied 1-1, and I went to sleep. I have no idea who won.
Who won the game?
I have no idea who won.
That's interesting about the 28 pitches in 3 innings. It's one of those things like where you talk to
the girl
players.
that finished up when at the end of regulation, she had like 68 pitches.
Right.
In 4 or 5 innings work.
Yeah, I think a lot. Obviously science is being incorporated in things. They're talking about spin rate and all. I mean, not just baseball but softball too. How to, just all the metrics that come into it, right?
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that stands true, whether you're playing softball or baseball, is as a defense, obviously is the one that holds the ball. Mm-hmm. It's like, the only sport where that is, kind of, I say the only sport, one of just very few that is the case. And I think in order to continue to have a low pitch count, to be more efficient, that you should really, as a pitcher, instead of trying to strike everybody out, and using max effort and these kind of things, you should really try to create contact within the first, 2 to 3 pitches. Mm-hmm. Because with the averages of the game, hitters tend to get themselves out more, right? Just because 300 and things like that.
We won 9 innings, 2-1. and here's the thing that's kind of unusual about that: nine hits per team. I mean, softball usually gets more. I mean, I look around at some of the others, and there were some notable games. I mean, as far as local, Duke played Charlotte. Duke beat Charlotte 14-2. Longwood beat NC State 1-0. Carolina beat Wilmington 5-0. There was another. And I don't see it. Anyway, I love it. I watch it. That was on the ACC network last night. But just love watching them play. Love watching them play. There was a left fielder robbed a Clemson player of a home run. She was that high above the fence.
Made the catch. I love watching
just
it.
Awesome. Just awesome.
Yeah.
And then because Clemson was able to advance a couple of runners on the tag, they had to go back and, did the replay to make sure they didn't leave too early. You know what was amazing? They had a camera. They had a camera angle that actually showed the second base runner and the catch in the same shot, which was awesome. So it didn't take them long. They came back and, and everything was good. But, Clemson is a relatively new softball program.
Yeah,
I want to say been there 5 years maybe.
Yeah.
Not long at all, but they have established what they have established.
Well, of course. I mean, you got the resources and the power, by the purse, backing of the purse.
Yep.
But, just the fact that Clemson did not have softball for so long is just mind-blowing to me.
Yep.
And I mean, it is what it is. And, wow, all the resources and just, I don't know. I think it's great.
South Carolina was higher ranked. Like I say,
they're
Clemson,
pretty good,
Clemson was
man.
19.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Let me tell you the thing that surprised me about it, and they showed this last night. South Carolina's 32-11. Clemson went to 35-11.
Right.
But even at number 12, South Carolina's like 7-8 in the conference. Mm-hmm. How do you get to number 12 and be 7-8 in the conference?
You're an SEC with Alabama, Auburn.
Oh, I know. I mean, you've got real
Miss,
softball teams down in the
Texas.
Southeast. Yeah.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
That's like one of those a few years ago when we were in the what they call the Southern Piedmont 1A, 2A.
Yeah.
And it was us and Cherryville as the 1As, and the 2As in that league were Bessemer City, West Lincoln, Lincoln, Chase, and Shelby. Well, I mean, there were times when our 4th and 5th place team were ranked, in the top 10 in the state. Mm-hmm. But in that league, I mean, it was just crazy.
Good morning,
crazy
Brock,
stuff.
Milton. Glad to have you guys along.
Yeah, but anyway.
Okay, we've eased into it. All right.
So
I'm going to do my best. I've kind of settled you down, got you mellowed out here.
Just go ahead and hit me.
Before your head explodes when we start down this next conversation. But to me, I'm going to say this is what I told you was going to happen. With any type of, I don't care what it is. It's in business. It's in sports. At some point, just because of the way things work, things will start to right themselves.
Yes.
And you're finding it now. Yes. And, I saw an article that somebody wrote yesterday, and let me tell you where they put the blame squarely. And I agree, the bullseye's there. It's where the blame needs to be placed from the very beginning. Mark Emmert and the NCAA, when they did not get ahead of this, and what's wrong with it now, there's chaos, and they're like, okay, we're going to settle this down. We're going to settle this down. And here's the thing. The biggest thing that hurt the kid from Tennessee that decided to hold out or whatever, what happened was you sent a message that I think it's the same reason Aaron Rodgers can't get a job. There's just so much drama you don't want to deal with. And he wasn't a stellar athlete. That was the other side of it.
Yeah, I mean,
he had an $8 million deal over 4 years. And my understanding is Daddy got greedy. All these other kids are getting these contracts, and the same thing happens in NFL. I don't think you should be able to hold out on your contract in the NFL. If you hold out, your contract date stops.
Right.
And I don't care how you don't want to play until you fulfill that. No. You don't get to move to somewhere else.
No, if you don't already contract's a 5-year suspension.
But everybody has to do it and agree to it. That's the problem.
And it's this rush to be like, oh, he or she is so good that I can't not. This is not true because it involves a team sport.
Morning, Harold Warren.
That is the problem.
Yeah.
A great athlete does not equal success. Sometimes it equals the demise of something due to the individualistic nature of it. Mm-hmm. I put out a post this morning of John Gruden giving a speech to Wisconsin, for spring football, and he embodies all the things that it takes, just in 4 things, wrapping it up. Majority of 4 things that it takes to be successful as a team and what you have to do. And this thing about, well, I'm going to get mine. Let me tell you what's happening. And number one, the right thing always wins out. Always does. And you're right about that. And you did say it will start fixing itself. You have said
it
that
has
since
to.
All of this
you can get all upset about it, but it doesn't really matter. It will fix itself. It has no choice but to
100%.
fix itself. Yeah. It's just the laws of nature.
You talk about, you said Coach Warren's watching, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you take somebody that has that much experience in that many years. The thing that he can tell you is it has to be a team effort.
Yeah.
Yes, you can have individualized great players, but that doesn't equal championships. And oftentimes it equals terrible outcomes and experiences for the rest of everybody else when it's not focused on the team part of things.
Were you surprised by one of the teams that popped? A couple of teams popped up and they said, well, they can't afford it because they don't put money to, like UCLA. They don't put money in football. They put it in their basketball.
Yeah,
but one of the teams that popped up that immediately kind of went away as not being a landing spot, Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the things that popped. I just think people are going to kind of stay away. I've seen that he's going to wind up at a Power 4, and he's not going to make the money that he was making at Tennessee.
Well, and the thing about it was I didn't really think watching him that he was really that good anyway. And
Tennessee's defense, what made the difference for them?
Yeah, and now good player, yes. I don't mean that he's not a very good, talented, fine young man, all these things, okay? But again, this is the part of the process where you have people that are helping you negotiate things or talk about things, number one, that may have your best interest at heart but have zero experience in the realm of that world. The advice that you seek and the counsel you seek and things that you are trying to achieve should always be first and foremost given and administered by those that are there where you want to be, that have experience getting there, right, to help you achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve. It doesn't matter if it's in sports or if it's in the job world or if it's for this or for that. all of these things are true across the board. These are principle-based items, Lanny, because they deal in truth. The value system of it has nothing to do with it. Right? Now, back up to this kid again. All right? When Josh Heupel, who to me is a very, very credible player and coach and person, steps in and says, dude, we're not even going there with this. Thank you. We appreciate it.
And do you know what? But do you know where he drew the line? What he drew the line on? He set out of practice. He hurt his team.
Yes, he wasn't going to play in the spring game.
It happened. It wasn't about they couldn't come to terms negotiating. Where the problem came from with him was you took it away from your team. And the other side of it is, which I've said, I know you don't like it, but I've said, he had a contract. The problem we have today is we don't make people honor those contracts. Even in the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, I don't care what it is. You decide, well, I'm worth more than that now. The part that people don't understand, and if your production and what you've done and accomplished was less, would you be willing to take a pay cut? If you're wanting an increase because you're doing better than you thought you would when you started, will you take you don't want to take the decrease.
Right.
It's a yin and a yang. You got to do it, but it's got to be both ways.
Well,
if it's going to be variable, it's got to be. If it can go up, it can go down.
Well, think of it like this, okay? There's so much celebrated in today's world where it's really not that important, but it's made to be as if it's a milestone. Mm-hmm. We have kids going and playing in tournaments on a weekend that play against, teams from wherever, and they win a championship, and they bring a trophy out that's like 10 feet tall. And the kids are like 7 years old. And it makes them think that it's the equivalent to the World Series or, the such and such state championships of that. I mean, it's every weekend. Well, they become numb to it. And there's no sequential order in understanding what true success versus achievement is and how it's measured, right? So it gives you a false sense of identity of who you are, what you're capable of doing based on something that's really not measurable. And someone can argue and say, yeah, but it is measurable in that weekend or in that series.
But it's not measurable individually. There are other extraneous or external factors that have an effect on that.
Right. Now again, I'm not downplaying, kids. I mean, my kids play in, play. What I'm saying is there's all this hype about, celebrating so-and-so today and their birthday. Yeah, I think it's great, and I want everybody to have a happy birthday and enjoy their day. And, as many friends as we got on Facebook, I try to hit everybody on that.
Yep.
I want them to enjoy their special day and do these things. But in the grand scheme of things, we got to a point where it's almost like the world stopped when somebody had a birthday.
Whether it's a sit-down meal or a call-in for the drive-thru,
that is not realistic.
Brookwood Cafe and Catering is the answer.
I was talking to some friends a couple of days ago that are in the industry
or a hot sandwich from the grill. They have what you're looking for to satisfy your taste buds.
One of the things we're trying to figure out is,
catering from 5 to 500, Brookwood has you covered as well. Stop by Brookwood Cafe and Catering at 202 Providence Mill Road in Maiden. Don't forget breakfast daily till 11 a.m. Open Tuesday 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., Wednesday through Saturday 6 a.m. till 8 p.m., and Sunday from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Call 828-428-8944 to place your order
when they were kids.
Right. If you ask around, when they were young you'll find Burke Mortuary has a reputation for excellence and commitment to value. They've built a reputation of trust for more than 35 years. Burke Mortuary is proud to offer personal attention, meaningful tributes, and the area's most affordable prices. They're also proud to offer you beautiful, state-of-the-art facilities. It's the perfect place to honor your loved one. So when choosing a funeral home, the choice is easy. Choose Burke Mortuary with locations in Maiden and Newton.
First Federal Savings Bank has been serving Lincoln County since 1940. And as it has been from the beginning, customer service is a priority to First Federal Savings Bank. They want to get to know you by name.
First Federal Savings Bank has the convenience, the products, and the services that the larger banks have, but with hometown people that you see throughout your community. Stop in and visit one of their 4 convenient locations and see what First Federal Savings Bank has to offer you. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
They have let something come
untangling your headphones, finding the right remote, saying goodbye to your favorite shirt that hasn't fit in 10 years. Why are simple things sometimes so complicated?
And that is the problem
with auto owners.
with the way these things are structured for people that are young.
Whether it's a sit-down meal or
their frontal lobes are not even developed.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Okay, and they're, and people say, yeah, but they're making their money. Listen. That's all great and dandy. But life is about sustainable success versus the challenges that you have, and then how do you overcome those challenges and failures to make yourself better? I would say that I'm a great example, of many failures and learning how to do that to try to make my way and be better at what I do every day. Mm-hmm. My dad told me when I got into the coaching profession at 20 years old, he said, your greatest learning curves will not come from the successes and the good calls that you may make for a bunt or a steal or a gut trap or, blitzing somebody. He said it's going to come from the things that you failed on that you learn, and that's what makes you better.
That's
you
correct.
Do not beat yourself up. You study harder. You don't get wrapped up in, oh, no, I can't believe I did that. Get wrapped up in, why did I do that? How do I do it going forward? Mm-hmm. And how does it benefit the people I'm trying to help?
Yep.
And, I don't see where the NIL stuff – we need to go back to the national letter of intent and have a binding contract. The day that we let players dictate what they can and can't do 100% without sequential order, and I say not punishment, but –
Well, the key is order.
Right, and rules. Anytime there's chaos, it's because expectation has not been set. Not because it hasn't been met, but because it hasn't been set, right? And so what we have to do is set expectations so people understand what the rules are. There's always going to be, a special circumstance. Listen, it doesn't matter. These are the rules. This is what has to happen. Well, yeah, but such and such, we hear a lot of times in the transfer portal, well, I went off to this school, but my mom or my grandma's sick and I need to get back home. We understand that. We are sympathetic to that. These things happen in life. But before you decide to go off somewhere, make sure you keep in mind these things could happen, right? It's the same thing as like when a kid goes to college and takes out all these loans.
Yeah.
Why does the college – you want to talk about fiduciary and responsibility? Why does the college not say, okay, these are the intended majors and how much you can make once you get out of school with the major that you're thinking about going in? These are the averages across the country. This is the range that you can potentially, if you can find a job in your major.
Right.
Not when, if, then this is how much you can make. And then you weigh that against how much in debt as far as investing in your college is going to be.
Right.
And decide, but no. We're not doing that. There's a big responsibility here. And it's the same thing with the growth and development and understanding of young people.
Yeah. Stephen, good morning. Let me switch gears. I'm going to take a quick time out, and then when we come back, I want to switch gears, staying on college football, but another thing that I wasn't aware of that they're looking at or supposed to come down the pike. Get your thoughts on it. Back in a moment.
For the drive-thru, Brookwood Cafe and Catering is the answer. A variety of meats, vegetables, and desserts cooked daily, or a hot sandwich from the grill, they have what you're looking for to satisfy your taste buds. If you need catering from 5 to 500, Brookwood has you covered as well. Stop by Brookwood Cafe and Catering at 202 Providence Mill Road in Maiden. Don't forget breakfast daily till 11 a.m. Open Tuesday 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., Wednesday through Saturday 6 a.m. till 8 p.m., and Sunday from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Call 828-428-8944 to place your order today.
If you ask around, you'll find Burke Mortuary has a reputation for excellence and commitment to value. They've built a reputation of trust for more than 35 years. Burke Mortuary is proud to offer personal attention, meaningful tributes, and the area's most affordable prices. They're also proud to offer you beautiful, state-of-the-art facilities. It's the perfect place to honor your loved one. So when choosing a funeral home, the choice is easy. Choose Burke Mortuary with locations in Maiden and Newton.
First Federal Savings Bank has been serving Lincoln County since 1940. And as it has been from the beginning, customer service is a priority to First Federal Savings Bank. They want to get to know you by name. First Federal Savings Bank has the convenience, the products, and the services that the larger banks have, but with hometown people that you see throughout your community. Stop in and visit one of their 4 convenient locations and see what First Federal Savings Bank has to offer you. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Untangling your headphones, finding the right remote, saying goodbye to your favorite shirt that hasn't fit in 10 years. Why are simple things sometimes so complicated? Thankfully, with auto owners, insurance doesn't have to be one of them. Auto Owners works with independent agents who live in your community and answer when you call, so you can worry about more important things, like finding a new favorite shirt. That's simple human sense.
Call Mooney Insurance in Maiden or East Lincoln Insurance in Denver or visit mooneyinsurance.com. At Stifel Nicholas, we're committed to offering investors personalized investment guidance. We're a full-service organization with departments staffed with professionals that specialize in a wide range of investment opportunities, from the most conservative to the most aggressive. We strive to give each account, regardless of size, careful, individual attention. Call Cole Rembert today at 828-624-7300. Stifel Nicholas, member SIPC and the New York Stock Exchange. And welcome back. Glad to have you here on a Wednesday morning. All right, let me go to my next topic. Here again, doing my best to try to keep your head from exploding. It's very important to me. Just want you to know that. G says that Nico is going to Tulane. He's going to be a green wave. And I don't think I'm going to tell you, that's a football juggernaut right there, G.
G said that last night. He said, Dad, I know where he's going. I said, where? He said, Tulane. I said, what?
Good morning, Bob.
Yep, that's where he's going.
G said Shador is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Let's go. Oh, man.
All right,
if we can't get Rodgers, I'll take Shador.
All right, I'm going to give you 2 topics. Okay. We'll go with the first one here. I was not aware of this. And this is something that's going on. Sam Kahn from The Athletic did this article.
Yep.
Said, for months, college football staff's been planning and bracing for a world with a 105-man roster limit, a byproduct of the House versus NCAA settlement. Now, I got to stop there because I wasn't aware of that. There used to be an 85-player scholarship limit.
That's right.
So are they saying, and here's why I don't like this 105, because what happens is, if you've got more money, you can creatively create
more
funds for players that are not under football scholarship.
Right.
I'll give you this example. When I got hurt and it was determined that I could not play, I signed my athletic scholarship back over, and they just gave me a scholarship to pay for the rest of my first year, because back then it was 1 year at a time, renewable. And then they offered me a half scholarship to stay on and just help with the team. And I'm like, no, I'll go back home because it's going to cost me more to go out of state and pay half than it would to go back in state. If I came here to play, so if I can't play. So let me go back. You know, I like even playing fields. Okay?
Sure.
I like a set of rules.
Yeah.
It's my schedule. I want to know, I'm thinking about last night, kind of what I'm doing today and how I'm going to do it, when I'm going to do it, everything. I got to have structure in my life. That's just who I am.
Right.
So when I see this, my question to you is, how do you feel about that? Should it be more? Should it be less? See, I don't like 105. And I'll
you
tell
don't like what?
105 roster.
On football?
Yeah.
Okay, just go ahead and talk.
Okay. And the reason being,
right.
From a kid's standpoint, you make the decision where you want to go. And you and I both know of players that could have played Division II and played, but opted to go to a Division I, never really see the field, but be a part of it.
For
practice,
the experience.
Yeah,
for the experience of it. Sure.
I'm okay with that.
Oh, 100%.
I'm okay with that. However, that kid made that decision to do that, knowing chances of playing.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
They had all the facts.
No problem.
And they made that decision.
Sure.
But then you've got some kids that get recruited.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they come under scholarship, or they give them the under-table money to get from 85 to 105, and they're never really going to get to play when there are other schools that would have given them that money, and they could have been a player. I guess what I'm getting at is
over-recruited.
Over-recruited, and sometimes kids go to school with a false hope. They're not being fairly evaluated on.
Well, but that's on them.
I understand that, but there's some responsibility to be honest with them.
Well, I think they are.
Okay.
And I think it's about opportunity. And that's how you learn in life. Like the protections and barriers set up in life, are not to keep us from making bad decisions or decisions that we find out in the end that are not good for us. That's how we learn. We make mistakes. And you are 100% right. The way that things have been set up for a long time and then are starting to skew a little bit the other way was you recruited heavy in this area so you didn't have to play against these people.
Mm-hmm.
You got these 3 quarterbacks in that all were about the same and great players, so one of them wouldn't go somewhere else and compete against you in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep telling them, hey, you keep working hard, you're going to get your opportunity, right? I think the sole responsibility falls back on the coaching staff, the athletic director. When you bring kids in and you tell them, we want you to be a part, it is incredibly important that you have constant communication and contact with them and letting them know where they stand, especially if they're not on the field, right? You have to say, listen, you come in here, you work your tail off, you're just not quite there. We've given you an opportunity or two. You're not performing at the level yet. You're not ready. But when you don't say those things and the kids just sit over there and rot, then confusion sets in because there's a lack of, my post this morning with John Gruden, a lack of communication. Coaches have to communicate better with other coaches and players. Players have to communicate better with their coaches and with each other, right? This is a byproduct, of the herding mentality, and I'm going to get mine. And the reason that all of this craziness has happened is because adults stopped being adults and started acting like children. It's okay to tell somebody, no, you are not going to do this. You are not ready. It is not your time. Yeah, but I'm out there doing this. And okay. First of all, you did not take a risk and create the platform. You are a beneficiary of it. Yes, you've worked hard. Yes, you go out there. Well, they're selling my jersey with my name on it. That's a different story. Okay? That's a different story. You're not entitled to anything, all right, except life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It says nothing about you should get yours, all right? That's about you going out in the world and bringing value and quality, and where the two meet is where you get paid. You are directly influenced and directly, you are in a spot, let's just put it this way, you are in a spot where you are replaced, whether it be difficult or easy, by the amount that you are given to do what you do, the degree of difficulty. That's it.
But
that's it.
Here's what I'm getting at with these roster sizes. This is where, and especially now,
it has to do with that, though.
I know, but this is why I'm saying now this needs to be tweaked, and it needs to be tweaked down. And the reason I say that is because the whole model of how athletics is working inside college now, don't care what sport it is.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, but because of the transfer portal?
Yes.
You've got a kid that, and this is why I say that, if they're limited, let's just say to 85, okay? So there's 30 kids that could go somewhere else and play, okay?
Right.
If they're really good and they deserve to be in that 85, when they go somewhere else, somebody will see that, and they may get offered to move up. You see it all the time. Like, I'll give you another example. Watching that softball game last night, the coach at South Carolina now Ashley Chastain. I cannot remember her last name. She played at South Carolina. But you know where she was coaching before she came to South Carolina? She was at Charlotte, 49ers.
Right.
She was their softball coach.
Right.
When she got the nod to come to South Carolina, she took 6 kids with her.
Yeah.
That are all SEC now.
Yeah.
But they didn't get that look.
Right.
Charlotte was all they could get. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
What I'm getting at is I'm more for I've got 22 kids that are going to play on a college football team with some subs, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Hard to get that 105 in. So if they go somewhere else and get some experience, grow into their man bodies, for example, the college basketball's doing it all the time. They are moving kids from mid-majors. That's why there wasn't the mid-major Cinderella story. That's good for the kids. That's good for the kids because you got kids that don't get the exposure that could play on a certain stage.
Well,
but until they get to a level where they can get some more exposure.
Yeah, I can see that. That's a good point.
I'm all about giving the kids an opportunity to show what they can do, prove what they can do, and that's where their opportunity comes from.
Yeah. At the expense of what?
See, I don't see a downside to it. I don't see a downside to a kid going to, let's say, Western. Let's just use that as an example.
Mid-major
going to Western.
Division I, right?
Yep. Because they didn't get highly recruited out of high school because it wasn't a good team, wasn't a good conference, whatever the reason. But they went to Western, and they're
because Western gave them the opportunity.
That's
to go
correct,
there. Okay.
and they're knocking the top out of it.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. If I'm doing well, I like having the opportunity to better myself. I make that decision. I don't want to leave Western. Western took a chance on me.
That's
I'm
what
going
I'm
to stay
saying.
right here.
Yeah.
The kid has the opportunity to do that. I'm all about giving exposure and opportunity
at the expense of the place that originally gave them the opportunity and exposure.
Well, if you're a coach, how do you feel if somebody comes in and hires your assistants to be head coaches?
That's what I want them to do.
Okay, but you gave them the opportunity to get into coaching. See, I look at it the same way with the player. I gave you an opportunity.
That's not I think that's apples and oranges.
Okay.
Because that's a career path where this is not. Sports is not a sustainable career path from a playing standpoint.
I understand.
People say, yeah, they are. They got a chance to get in the NFL. Okay, run the numbers, and then we'll have that discussion later.
No,
same thing in baseball, same thing in basketball.
Michael Wyatt, good morning. We were just talking about you. Jeters, good morning.
Great,
I mean,
I don't like it. I think they should be able to leave. I think they should be able to transfer, but I think there should be rules, and I think there should be a period in time in which they can do that. You know, I don't like this thing about we're not playing spring football because somebody's going to come in and pick our kids off when the portal opens up.
Here's the deal. I think there should be one window.
Yeah,
okay?
that's it in the summer.
No.
Oh, yeah.
I want one window. I want one window at the completion of the season before you get into spring, before you get into anything.
Can't do it. But and the reason I say that is if you do it that way. Now, I've thought about what you're saying, okay? And originally I was in agreement.
I don't like the one that just opened up today. I can tell you that.
That's what I'm saying. So I thought about doing that like at the end of the season and then going to some. Sometimes, you know, it's better to take a look at things, you know, in a year basis to teach them process of just not getting emotional and jumping, right? If you're going to make a commitment, it makes you study the commitment if you have to stay an entire year. Basically, when the semester ends and there's a drop dead date, then you should have a 10-day window of going to be able to go where you want to go. You need to make it very difficult. You need to make it intensive, and it needs to be inclusive. All right? So, yes, if the athlete wants to leave, they get one time. And after that, they got to sit out a full year and, you know, they can redshirt, whatever, but they can't take a medical. Like, this is one time, and it goes, you know, that's it. Right? After that, it's going to cost you. And what it's going to cost people to do is truly evaluate instead of having something dangled in front of them, the carrot.
Yes.
Now it's going to teach people, all right, I don't care, male, female, whatever sport it is, it's going to teach them to take a look at the quality and the value of the offer or the opportunity that they have.
Correct.
And be able to assess that and say, yes, I'm willing to stay in this place for an entire year. The whole premise of college athletics was the academic background. Okay.
Yeah, but money got involved, and that's when it got when it got ugly.
But again, what has happened? It's not that money. To your point, it did get involved. But I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is adults started acting like children and trying to appease everyone.
They did, but they did it because they had the money to do it. That's what I'm saying.
That again, that's childlike behavior.
Yes,
that's not adult behavior.
Yeah.
All right. That is being emotional about something instead of process oriented for the long term good of something. Mm-hmm. And there's arguments to be made about why players should be paid, why they shouldn't be paid, this, that, and the other. Hey, fine, go have that.
But that's not the.
But this is where we are.
Discussion. The discussion is
where we are.
The discussion is we've already allowed that to happen. What we have to do is we have to come up with some kind of structure because we have no structure on how any of this works. I'm okay with one transfer, with one portal at the end of the academic year. I'm okay with that. I just don't like it being where it's at when that portal opens up in December and you've got teams that have not finished. And I'm speaking strictly of football.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, okay,
absolutely.
That's not fair to the teams.
No.
And I'm okay. And I'm okay with having a thing to where you get one mulligan, no questions asked. You want to transfer, you go anywhere you want to, one time. Now, next time, got to be some consequences for that. There has to be a reason why you do it. If the coach doesn't leave, you need to have a sit-out period.
I think if your coach leaves and doesn't bind a contract, then it's free. Then you can go anywhere.
Sure, because people you go to play for a coach.
Right.
I don't care what anybody says as much as anything.
It's about the experience that you have. The problem is that we try to wrap all these other things into it that are taking away from the experience. And I'm going to go back and just say, a lot of this, if you look at the NAFTA agreement that was so many years ago where our companies, here in the United States that had been here for many, 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 many years and employed so many people, and it happened here locally, people I grew up with, their parents worked at these jobs, the guys and girls I went to school with. They worked there. I worked there. All right? Parents would sometimes not be able to make games because they were working. Loyalty to that program, loyalty to that, to that business. And then all of a sudden one day they move, to another country, whether it be Mexico or Canada or China, wherever. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. They were just gone. All right? So when you have, a generation of people that were affected by – I sit on a steering committee for Catawba County. It's called, talent acquisition. And they're talking about, well, we've got to, attract new talent. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I don't disagree with that. But let's talk about why people have the mentality they have and why they move jobs so much. And, Lenny, the reason is, and it goes to college sports, in particular football, volleyball. It doesn't matter what sport, but let's just say football, right? These people worked in these jobs their whole lives. People I went to school with who worked on weekends or during the summer or whatever, that's what they did. All right, and all of a sudden, they were told, you got to be here every day at 5:50, clock in, you clock out at 3:45. I'm just giving an example, 3:50, 3:45, whatever it is. You got 30 minutes for lunch, the bell rings, you go out here, you do this, you got breaks, I'm going to work. I got to show up and get the job done no matter what. Well, all right, parents miss some games, miss some awards, because everything's more important. Nothing's more important than the job. And then all of a sudden, that company just up and leaves and says, well, we're gone. We can, cheaper labor, we're going to do it this way. Now, what does that say to that kid that said, well, my mom and dad missed my awards, things that we were doing as a family because they had to work and there was nothing more important than that job?
Let me go back. Okay. Let me go back to what you were saying.
But that's the point. There's no loyalty.
All right. And on that same topic.
So this is where we are. What is going on?
On that same topic, let me ask you this, because I don't know the rules anymore. Okay, I don't know how it works. Mike Self, thanks for joining in this morning. Let me ask you. I got to get my volume turned off here. Okay, so let me ask you this, and maybe you know more how it works now than it did when I was in school. When you signed a scholarship, you had 5 years to play 4.
Right, that's what I did.
All right.
Yeah, no problem.
These were scholarships for that entire duration that were renewable
yearly.
And the only reason that they could take your scholarship usually had to be if you committed a criminal offense.
Right.
There had to be a reason.
Or if you get hurt.
Now, today, can a college cut a kid that's under scholarship? Or I'm going back to your loyalty question. When I sign with ABC University. I'm expecting to be there for 4 years.
Right.
Let's say that I'm not working out the way they had envisioned me to work out.
Yeah, they have the conversation with you, and they basically tell you,
but
listen, this
should
is
they?
not – what do you mean?
Should they be able to have that conversation, or shouldn't they be on the hook for the 4 years?
No,
they made a commitment.
Yeah, no, it's not that they're not on the hook.
Okay.
But what's happening today in this world is more and more coaches are sitting down and talking to players about opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
The good ones do. All right, we're still working on what's –
Now, what do you – but when you say sit down and talk to them about opportunities, what do you say?
Listen, about getting on the field, right?
Yeah. This
is where you are. This is the assessment that we've got for you.
Right.
Your opportunities here are going to be limited to get on the field. It may be advantageous for you to look at such and such. The most successful coaches are the most transparent with their players.
Agree.
Because they care about them as individuals, all right, and how it benefits the team. But they care about them as individuals. The football coach at Mars Hill, all right, Coach Clifton, he makes it his sole purpose and job, Lenny, to go around and know each kid.
That's because he's been there for 175 years. He knows how this works, and he does it the way it's supposed to be.
Let me tell you something. Him, Kevin Barnett, the defensive coordinator up there, they are that whole Goody's son, the coach at Bandy's, his son, Coach Luke Godwin, coaches up there. These guys they take care of their players. They're invested in them as people, and they're incredibly transparent with them. Mm-hmm. And they try to help enhance and develop their skills and say, hey, look, right now we're not quite where we want to be. Your third year – I'm just giving an example. You're the third year here.
Yes.
The options are let's keep working hard and try to get you out there and contribute on the field on Saturdays, just like you do in practice here every day that's very valuable. Or, there may be opportunities at another, maybe another institution. But let's do what's in your best interest. And by taking a personalized interest, not only are the coaches investing in the player, but the players are investing into the whole experience. This is where we're lacking quality and value. We're leaving the value out and trying to only focus on quality, which quality is not athleticism. That's not what that is.
There are still issues, okay?
There's always going to be, right?
When I talk about the numbers and players and stuff,
right.
There are some schools, my school included, that would hoard up all the good talent and then weed it out.
Yeah.
And I don't like that unless you're completely transparent with the kid, because sometimes schools will take talent to keep it away from other talent, even though they're not going to.
In this life, you have to – everything that happens to you, no matter if it's your fault or not, you have to say, you know what, it's my fault. It should have been better.
Right.
You have to have that mentality. Everything is your fault. It doesn't matter if it is or not. It's my fault. I've got to be better at what I do. I don't need to put myself in that situation so I don't have to come out. I need to be better at making decisions.
But sometimes you've got to have a fair evaluation to know where you stand instead of somebody blowing smoke up your rear end.
But the fair evaluation comes from looking in the mirror and understanding the difference between ego.
I get that.
Ego, all right, and big fish, little pond.
I get that. But you still got to have, as you said, one of the things you admired about Clifton so much was the transparency. He would sit down and say, here's where you're at. This is where you got to get to. Do it. Okay? I'm not sure that the big power players do that. That's what I'm getting at.
Coach Rob Smith, who was the defense coordinator at Duke, that's now at Texas A&M with Elko, when they were there, they were very good about that.
I didn't say that there wasn't some. No, I'm just saying
they were very good about that. These are expectations we have. We're recruiting so-and-so, or we'd like so-and-so to be on this team. This is what they can expect coming in from what we see now. Things evolve and change. What I don't like is I don't like being given an opportunity at a university because you may have been overlooked. Mm-hmm. Listen, that's your fault. If you're overlooked, that's your fault because you were not undeniable at whatever it is you were doing. You have to be undeniable. When you are not undeniable, all right, when you are not showing that you're the best, and you know what? Sometimes in life somebody just misses you.
Yeah.
That should be motivation for that not to happen again. All right? You have to be undeniable. If you're not getting the reps you want, then you go out and fix it. You go out and be undeniable. Well, somebody didn't, I just didn't get that chance. Listen, you weren't undeniable. Okay?
Let me give you –
and I don't like going from Western to Chapel Hill. I just don't like it.
Let me give you this.
Without having to sit
JR, good morning. TJ, good morning. Bobby Smith, good morning. Andrew, one comment here said a lot of valuation issues start in youth sports and with parents, and I agree with that. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Let me tell you something that I always told my kids when they played, okay? And it's not always true and accurate, but I like to think that most of the time that is. I've always said that if you really can play and contribute and be an attribute to the team, I don't know of very many coaches that won't utilize you
or won't come find you.
Now, if you constantly do that, but they constantly ignore it, they're not in it to win it anyway. As a coach, I want the best kids on the field. When I say best kids, I didn't say best athletes. I want the best kid that does everything I need to get done, whether it's prepared,
absolutely.
Whether it's attitude, whether it's coachable, dependable, whatever. All of those skills have to be rolled in and evaluated. One can't override the other one. But I still say that if a coach wants to win and you can play and they're being true to the team, you're going to play. I'm going to play you. Because that's what it's going to be based on. And sometimes that doesn't happen.
Well, it doesn't happen a lot because the degree of people making the decisions and the IQ of a lot of those individuals is incredibly low, not from an intelligence standpoint.
Development, maturity.
But from a standpoint of, do I really know what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Do I just want to wear the shirt that says coach on it and walk around because it makes me feel
Yeah.
so – No. There's so many other factors that go into it. But, when you take ownership of everything that happens to you, no matter what it is, you know what? It's my fault. I should have communicated better. You know what? It's my fault. I should have been undeniable when I wasn't. You know it's my fault. I laid in bed an extra 10 minutes when I should have got up and run a mile.
There is a level.
That's the way you do it.
There is a level of responsibility that you've got to take.
Yeah, and this is the thing I tell kids all the time. When you're going off to a college, and you make that decision, and everything looks really good, and you feel like that's the best fit for you in that program, you ask two things after you've had time to reflect and evaluate. Let's just say after year one. Number one, is the environment good? If the answer is no, you got to leave immediately because that's not healthy. Mentally or –
And you're the only one that can decide that.
Right.
Whether it's just a personality conflict, you've got to figure it out.
Is the environment good?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, then you go to number two. Am I getting an opportunity that I feel like I'm getting an opportunity? If the answer is yes and you're still not playing, you continue to work your rear end off. And you work as hard as you can. And you be undeniable. And you just go get it. But if either one of those, if the second one is no, then you have a decision to make. Mm-hmm. I'm going to continue to stay in the environment I'm in because it's good, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity down the road, or I've got to go seek another good environment where I'm going to get an opportunity. Yeah. Okay? There still has to be a level of consequences with that once you make a decision. All right? There's too much of this freelance, free-based stuff going on.
But the problem is, this goes back to where we started. Okay? I'll circle
with
back
Nico,
up to where we started. Got to have a set of rules and guidelines. You got to have structure. If you don't have structure, then you don't have any way to keep people inside the boundaries. It's kind of like going in bowling. If you're not a good bowler, you got to have those bumpers up there because you got to bounce around till you figure out how to get it working. So you got to have some structure to make it work.
This is the problem with asking people. They can go around and scream, "We're national champions," all they want. Can you name Duke starting five?
Oh, I know.
Can you name Houston starting five? I'm talking about if you're not a fan of that team.
Yeah, no, you can't.
I bet you can go back to 1982 and name all of Carolina's starting five, and you went to Clemson.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And there's a big problem. And until adults stop acting like children and start being adults.
Goes back to what I said. We have not applied any structure.
No.
Because I got news for you. I don't care if you're an adult. There's a lot of adults that have trouble being adults if they don't have structure.
That's what I'm saying.
So you got to children. You got to force it into the structure.
Being adult is doing what you must do. When you don't want to do it.
Yep.
Knowing that you got to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it has to be done.
Oh yeah.
If not, you're a child.
Right.
Okay. I don't care what your age is.
I agree.
And you know what? We all have bad days where we don't feel what. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you just won't.
Well, you just can't. Here's the deal. In today's society, I don't care if it's kids or adults or whatever, as much room as you give them to roam, they're going to take it all. So if you don't have any fences, you don't have any guidelines, so you got to have that.
That's the difference between good and great.
Yeah.
You know, is Mel Robbins, Mandy and I, Mandy's really latched on to watching, some of the things that she puts out. And she has the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mm-hmm. I'm laying in bed. I don't want to give up. So wait a minute. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and get up. It's that 10-second window, 5-second window that you got.
To make a better decision.
To make a decision that's going to start your day.
To make a better decision.
Right.
Not just a decision, a better decision.
You make that decision to get up so other things lead, like you're saying, to better decisions throughout the day. When you lay in bed and you feel sorry for yourself and, oh, poor boys, listen, number one, there are people starving or very hungry that live in your neighborhood. Okay? Mm-hmm. My thing is flush the first world problems, get out and help somebody, all right? The way you do that is by improving yourself every day that you can, all right, and bringing quality and value to those around you. You have to do that. And when you start skewing a monetary value with that, now the numbers have to work regardless, okay? It's just part of the world. But when you start going out and saying, well, I've had this contract, but, I think I deserve more. Well, that's great, but this is what you signed. Mm-hmm. It's like Scottie Pippen was told, by Jerry Reinsdorf. Mm-hmm. He said, Scotty, don't sign a multi-year contract. Just sign it for one because everything's stepping up in pay. He said, but if you sign a multi-year contract, I'm holding you to it. Well, Scotty's only making like $1.3. I'm just giving an example, like $1.3 million a year. When other guys are making 7, 8, 10, Scotty sits out. Oh, my back hurts.
Right.
Hell, they nearly lose one of the championships because Scotty's not playing.
Yeah.
And Jerry Reinsdorf told him, I'm not renegotiating this contract.
Yeah.
You have to finish what you signed.
Well, you have to
We're going to do that.
You have to be willing to accept whatever the outcome is based on doing what's right.
And before we go, and this is it, I got to go too. You are where you are because that's truly where you want to be. If it wasn't, you would fix it.
I agree.
Okay? That all goes back to everything is my fault. I'm going to take responsibility for it. And if I have successes, I'd like to thank those around me that helped me get here.
Doesn't mean you won't get knocked down sometimes.
That's what
you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going. Have a great day, everybody. I didn't even make his head explode today. I did good.
Almost.
See you guys.